thank you so much for being here again. I'm super on time. My name is Vivian Sming. I'm the Associate Director of Academic and Public Programs here at the Cantor Arts Center. Tonight's program, Beyond Day Jobs, Alternative Economies for Artists, is co-sponsored by the Basic Income Lab at Stanford Center on Poverty and Inequality. It's organized in conjunction with our current exhibition that's on view titled Day Jobs, which is curated by our wonderful director, Veronica Roberts. Veronica, can you say hi? And the show features 36 artists whose day jobs have had a profound creative impact on the artist's work and practice. And if you haven't gotten a chance to check it out yet, Day Jobs is on view through July 21st. Veronica and our curatorial assistant, Naja Vahan, are offering a generous amount of curator talks, so you're all welcome to join us for those, as always, our programs are free. We've had so many great conversations with members of the public, with students, faculty, about artistic labor and value, finding creativity in the everyday, and of course, the economies of art. And the show has really given us an opportunity to critically think about the ways that artists are financially supported, specifically within the United States economic system. And I don't have to tell everyone here how truly difficult it is to live in the Bay Area, let alone sustain a creative practice. So today we're going to hear more about some initiatives that present alternative economies for artists, which is just especially so important given that we're in a moment where basic needs are not met. And so we're going to start at the local level. We're going to hear from Tatiana Vahan first, who is an artist organizer. And Tatiana will be sharing two initiatives that she has led, Bar Fund and LA Artist Census, both supporting her artist community at a local level with the ethos of artists supporting other artists. And then we're going to take a little step outwards, hearing from Naja Gordon, who is representing Creatives Rebuild New York. Naja is an artist and also the program manager for the Guaranteed Income program at Creatives Rebuild New York, which she'll be sharing more details about, but the program distributed $1,000 monthly to over 2,000 artists residing in the state of New York for a period of 18 months. Yeah. And she'll be sharing some of the learnings and impact from that program. And if you all have just joined us, there are plenty of seats in the front, so come on up. And then we're going to step out even further out and hear from Marie-Laure Mulayi, who is a visiting doctoral researcher at the Basic Income Lab here at Stanford Center on Poverty and Inequality. Marie-Laure will be sharing more about universal basic income, so expanding outwards beyond artists as the focal group. She'll be talking about how that differs from guaranteed income and sharing some national and international examples, public perception of these ideas, and how that affects policy. And then we're going to bring it back in and hear from Kevin Dublin, who is a Bay Area writer, educator, and advocate. And Kevin was a recipient of San Francisco's Guaranteed Income pilot for artists, which distributed $1,000 monthly to over 100 artists for a period of 18 months. And that pilot was facilitated through Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in partnership with Mayor Breed and the City of San Francisco. And Kevin will be talking about that, the impact of that program and shifts in his own understanding of being an artist and a community member. After the panelists present, we will open it up for Q&A. This is quite a robust program we have for you planned tonight. And at the same time, it really is not comprehensive at all. There are so many other initiatives and artist-led projects. Really, it could be a week-long conference on this subject. But we really hope that you leave today feeling a little inspired and motivated. After the program, we will be serving some tea and cookies. Or if you're, like to stay up like I am, we can toast to a little coffee. And we really encourage you all to stay with us, meet someone tonight, make a friend, and be part of these efforts. Because every single person in this room has an role to play in ensuring that art and culture thrives. And at the heart of that, of course, is ensuring that art and artists and cultural workers thrive. And we need everyone to be a part of this, so thank you so much for being here. It really means a lot. And before I hand over the mic to Tatiana, I want to take a moment to thank all of those who have lent me their time and ear to help me think through this program. Stephanie Ema, Sean Klein, Sarah Kimberlin, Mark Peterson, Deborah Cullinan, tonight's panelists, and my colleagues here at the Cantor who make our programs possible. Thank you so much, and please join me in welcoming tonight's guests.
Okay, first of all, thank you, Vivian and Kwang Lee, for organizing this and for everyone for being here tonight. So I'll jump right in. In 2017, I started a public art project called Bar Fund, where artists fundraised and distributed unrestricted cash grants to fellow Los Angeles-based artists in solidarity with one another. To fundraise, artists would volunteer to bartend at art openings and art events across the city. We then took the tip money, pooled it together, and gave it out as unrestricted cash grants to local artists through a public open call for applications. These are some of our artist bartenders. This is the open call for applications and what the grant money looked like after pooling it together for the first round. This is about $6,000. And for that first round, there was an artist who wishes to remain anonymous, but who donated an additional $5,000 to gift. So the grant panel was made up of the cohort of artists who bartended for that particular round of grants, with a new grant panel of artists making up each round. I started Bar Fund in response to the lack of resources and safety net that I had experienced myself as an artist in LA, particularly following a year-long illness that left me in debt, feeling alienated and scared of having no local support system. So for Bar Fund, in 2 years, about 30 artists gathered over $17,000 in tips by bartending at events at 27 art spaces. And we gave out 15 grants of a little over $1,000 each to local artists who applied through our open application process. On the left is what the Bar Fund grants looked like. They were given out in the same single dollar bills that it was collected in tips, as an illustration of what is typically abstract, labor, abundance, the money that circulates our community. It also illustrates the thousands of people that circulate the art ecosystem and that contributed to the grant. And on the right is a ledger that accompanied the cash grant. And you can see it has the amount collected at each opening or event. It has the artist who collected it. It has the name of the space and the exhibition. So again, illustrating the labor involved. This is not my piece. This is a piece by Hans-Peter Feldman. Bar Fund is about abundance. It flips the script on the common mentality of scarcity that artists often and understandably work within, competing for opportunities and resources. And it creates space for artists to work together in the spirit of mutualism and community care. The idea of creating Bar Fund, a grant for artists by artists, was a response to the reality that artists are rarely in the position to choose how resources are allocated in their art community. Grant money is typically controlled by people or institutions in positions of financial privilege and therefore power. Historically, these groups reflect a more homogeneous perspective, and their members are emblematic of the systemic inequities that exist and are perpetuated in our society. When artists receive grants, they're not only receiving monetary support, but also visibility and validation, all of which help advance their careers. Grant-making institutions, thus, are shapers of what is deemed valuable and worthwhile, what is preserved and what is historicized. So artists, I felt, should be in this position. Yes. So I'm going to share the questions that were on the Bar Fund grant application. which were designed by artists to be conversational, to kind of provoke artists to write from their own voice, which is very uncommon in arts grants applications. Describe the work you are showing us, or tell us something about your life or artistic practice. What are you currently thinking about? What or who has shaped you as an artist? Do you have a day job or something you do besides art to supplement your income? If yes, what is it? Or are you looking for work? If you were creating a grant application for artists, what question would you ask? Or as an artist, what do you think is important to gift money to in our community? What ideas do you think are important to support? And this last one was a way to kind of hand the mic over to the applicants to potentially help design the next application. So I was on one of the Bar Fund grant panels where I, along with 13 other artists, read through almost 200 grant applications. And based on my own experience, I wasn't surprised to read stories of financial precarity experienced by artists, but reading the stories over and over and over and over again was really impactful. And there were a number of artists who wrote about their lack of health care despite having serious health conditions, and a number of artists experiencing housing precarity or houselessness. Many of the artists who were writing about these experiences were also artists who had some form of art world validation. Some had shown at museums, some had gallery representation, art degrees, other forms of cultural validation. And while these are by no means qualifications for being an artist, their presence amongst these stories demonstrated the lack of infrastructure in place for artists, regardless of how they participate in the art ecosystem. And this will go back to, this is data we collected after Bar Fund that reflects some of what artists were experiencing. This was collected right before going into the pandemic. So in the same week that we were reviewing Bar Fund applications, an article in the LA Times was published that exuberantly reported on the hundreds of millions of dollars that had recently been donated to the county's cultural institutions. The article cites the Hammer Museum's success in fundraising for its $80 million building expansion, along with LACMA's ambitious and controversial $650 million building expansion, of which they had already raised $450 million, with a quarter of the cost covered through public funding. And we know now that that budget for that building is now up to $750 million. Yeah, it's like almost $1 billion. So here we were, reviewing hundreds of applications from artists who were applying for a grant that was just over $1,000. That we artists had fundraised ourselves because there was a lack of funding and resources for us within our industry. And many of us fundraising for Bar Fund were in precarious positions ourselves, myself included. Meanwhile, LA's arts institutions were able to fundraise hundreds of millions of dollars for building projects. These institutions would not exist, nonetheless be able to fundraise money without the artists who make up their collections, exhibitions, and programming. Some of whom are applying to our grants, some of whom lack healthcare, housing, and other basic necessities. So what responsibility do these arts institutions have to the artists and their permanent collections? What responsibility do they have to the artists whose work they exhibit, that create their programming, or that are a part of the art communities that inspire and make up the community that their institutions benefit from? I also wonder what artists would do with a $750 million budget. So this stark contrast between the stories of Bar Fund applicants and those of LA's arts institutions became the catalyst for creating the LA Artist Census. I wanted to write an opinion piece to the LA Times, responding to their article and sharing the experiences of artists in the very same ecosystem as these museums they were reporting on. I looked for data about artists in LA and there wasn't any. And there was very little about artists in the United States. And this was surprising to me because data has become the building block for infrastructure, policy, funding, and without data, these things often cannot address the realities experienced by those not represented. And this absence of data on artists, I feel, is reflective of the blind spots the art ecosystem has to artists, particularly those artists who are in the most precarious positions, which we know tend to be people who are a part of communities that have been historically violently marginalized. These blind spots can be viewed as an extension of the social and racial inequities that workers across sectors experience across the country. And so this was the impetus for creating the LA Artist Census. LA County is the most populous county in the United States, encompassing visual artists with many different experiences, backgrounds, identities. And so I wanted to bridge the participatory approach and collective ethos of Bar Fund to the LA Artist Census. This was our office at the ICA. This was like during office open hours, people would come in, chat with us, some people joined our team of volunteers. I also just want to point out that neither of these were like institutionally or organizationally supported initiatives. These were completely like from the grounds, artist, grassroots driven. It was also important to make this artist-led initiative because out of everyone in the art ecosystem, artists have the best understanding of their communities. We are the ones who are creating the work, we are at each other's kitchen tables. There's a more personal relationship between artists, and so there's also a deeper understanding, of course, of what it is that is happening behind the scenes. So by inviting fellow artists to co-create and engage with our research process, we have the opportunity to gather and publish data that's often overlooked or misinterpreted by the institutions that ordinarily conduct this type of research. So I'll go through these slides sort of quickly now because I want to get to some of the data. So this was one of our outreach team meetings. It was a zine folding night. These are our informational zines, and on the left is one of our outreach team members who is artist Deborah Scacco. At Freeze, canvassing with them, just letting people know about the project. This was an experiment in collective data analysis that we did. This was, in 2020, so everything was on Zoom at that point. And we had about 100 people show up to this. We had these interactive data visualizations where you could filter based on race, gender, queerness, disability. This was the graphic advertising that is a really great illustration that describes the bias that's inherent to data research and why it's great to do these things collectively. This is, so after analysis, we got our first grant and we were able to publish a community newspaper that we distributed throughout LA in art spaces for free. So some of our findings, and we have a lot of findings, you can find them on our website. I'll just share some of the income-based findings. So the US Census lists $64,251 as the median household income in LA County in 2019. So 76.75% of respondents earned under $60,000 that year, and almost half earned under $30,000 that year. About half of respondents had a household income of less than $60,000 in 2019. And 55% of respondents didn't find it simple to predict their income from month to month. And you all live in the Bay Area, you know how difficult it is to survive in a very expensive city. So this is to show you some of the analysis that we did and presented. We did something called data dispatches. We wanted to make the research accessible to a broader audience, and so we did these sort of bite-sized reports that we emailed out and posted on social media. The first one was on basic necessities. We looked at art earnings and expenses, artist perspectives or interviews that we did with artists, art earnings, and then we analyzed everything based on gender, race, queerness, and disability to see if there were disparities among artists. So this is our website if you want to see any of that information, and then I'm just going to share one little audio clip that are from the interviews. These are other people. The interviews were anonymous. We had other people read back excerpts that went into our audio publication, which is on SoundCloud. So there's just...
I'm sorry, can you go back one slide? I just want to...
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah, thank you.
My identity as a parent impacts my ability to earn money as an artist just because you can't put in that time. The art world is a lot about connections. That's how you learn about opportunities. It's totally been a struggle because I can't get out to those events because I have a kid to take care of. I have a family to look after.
In 2019, I had just enough money to pay for my housing, my utilities, my communication stuff. Food was a priority. I would hope that I didn't have to go to the doctor. In fact, one time I got mono and my friends paid for me to go to urgent care because I couldn't afford to go.
I've had people make extremely transphobic and racist comments directly to my face because they didn't know that I'm trans or identified that way, and that has caused a number of problems. I also feel like it's much harder to get work if you publicly identify as trans. So I think that explains a lot about where the disparities in art practice earnings by gender come from.
I think it's important to define what living wage means. The term is commonly used by policymakers as a goal for poor people, but they fail to acknowledge that living wage only allows for survival. There is no room for simple luxuries like dining out, buying yourself something nice, or a short vacation, or how emergency expenditures like unexpected medical bills, mechanics, etc. can completely destabilize you for years. I'd hardly call it living when you can barely keep your head above water.
I feel totally stuck. It's like I can't make any money or progress on my career until certain invisible people decide my art is worth paying attention to. But on the flip side, the art world looks down upon artists' public efforts to make money from their work, like Instagram shops, for example. So it's a waiting game that only some can afford to play.
My identity as a parent impacts my ability to earn money as an artist. My identity is...
I should just say, like, just in closing, those comments, those are comments that artists made about our data after we analyzed it. So we wanted to see how it related to anyone's experience and wanted to bring in the nuance of people's experiences. You know, not everybody has the same experience, so we wanted some of the contradictions and nuances to go in there. So that's all. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm Naja Gordon. I'm the program manager for the Guaranteed Income for Artists program at Creatives Rebuild New York, or CRNY. I'm an artist, and I am here representing the Bronx, New York. To start, I'd like to ground us in the space with a deep collective breath. So let's take it together. Oh, you took it. Perfect. No, that's great. That's great. Let's take another one. Ready? In through the nose. Hold it. Out through the mouth. Jeez. Okay, I'm going to ask you all to take another breath, but first, if you'd like to close your eyes, if you feel comfortable. I'd like for you to call in, just with your mind, an artist whose work has impacted your life. So hold it. Think about this person. Think about this artist. Scanning to see if you have it. Okay, now exhale. One more, in through the nose. Out through the mouth. And keep that artist in mind for later, please. It's important for me to bring arts and artistry into the room while doing this important care work. So, thanks for those breaths. To start, a little context about Creators Rebuild New York, or CRNY. So we are a 3-year philanthropic initiative with substantial investments towards artists' livelihoods and the organizations that support them. We're funded by the Mellon Foundation, the Ford Foundation, and the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. Shout out to them. We worked with artists to design how both programs will happen. We operate 2 core programs, our Guaranteed Income for Artists program, which I'm here to talk about, and our Artist Employment program. And we hope that our work can contribute to long-term impact and sustainability. So we have a sub-team working on research, narrative change, comms, etc. I'd be remiss if I didn't give you a little definition of guaranteed income. So guaranteed income is recurring cash payments for individuals. It's unconditional, meaning you don't have to do anything with the cash to prove that you're deserving of it. It's not tied to employment, and it's supplemental, meaning it works with other policies. So it's just one intervention. And in our program, we gave $1,000 a month for 18 consecutive months to 2,400 artists. I'd also like to say we're sunsetting this December, and we gave our final payment in March. So I want to do a little snap. It was a feat. It was really a labor of love. A few fun facts also. We have 61 of the 62 counties in New York represented in our program. Artists are everywhere. We are the largest statewide program in the country, but we're not alone at all. So there are other amazing programs like the GI program in Ireland, which is nationwide. The GI program operated by Springboard, and the San Francisco program, which you'll hear more about later. I also want to talk a little bit about how we got into this program, how people were selected, right? So our program received over 22,000 applications for 2,400 spots. I have to take a deep breath when I say that, because that's a lot. Can everyone hear me, by the way? Great. And for us, it was really tricky to define what an artist is, right? Because who gets to decide who's an artist? So to be eligible, you had to demonstrate that your primary residence was in New York State at the time of the application, that you have financial need as determined by the self-sufficiency standard, and that you are an artist, culture bearer, or culture maker. And we used a randomized process, so it wasn't merit-based. And we prioritized people who come from communities that face structural barriers to financial security, right? So just a few examples: Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, caregivers, people who have criminal legal system involvement, people who have immigrated, people living with disabilities, the list goes on. It's one of my favorite slides. So we know artists have financial needs, right? Raise your hand if you know that artists have financial needs, just to make sure we're all on consensus here. Great. So this data is from November of 2022, and it illustrates a few things that I'd like to highlight. You'll see the yellow. Over half of our artists reported that they carry unmanageable debt. And about a third of our artists reported that they were enrolled in public benefits. one more for good measure. 62% of artists reported that they have no financial safety net. So, this is another raise your hand moment. Raise your hand if you're aware that artists have many different ways that they garner income. Right? I'm sure there are a lot of artists in this room. So we noticed that our artists tend to equate GI, guaranteed income, with grants. And while they're both ways to make money, I want to highlight that GI is a different intervention than a grant, right? And here are some of the differences that we know. So grants are often conditional, they're often temporary, and they're often merit-based. Whereas GI as a policy intervention is meant to be unconditional, right? So no strings attached. Consistent, right? So regular, and rooted in deservingness, meaning for our program, you didn't have to prove your worth. You didn't have to demonstrate that you are even making art or that you're engaging with your artistic process. You really just had to exist. Okay. And again, GI is meant to be an intervention that supplements the variety of ways that artists get money, including day jobs, not to be corny. Oh, don't let me corn away, I'll be up here all night. So, to witness the impact of the GI payments on our artists, we hosted regional gatherings in the fall of last year. This is actually my favorite slide, so if I said another slide was my favorite, this is my favorite slide. This photo is a snapshot from our Queens gathering last year. There's my awesome boss, Mara. There's our co-manager, there's me. These are some of our artists, and this is actually an artist, Claudia, in our program also. We took some awesome portraits, and this was a really, really meaningful time for all of us. You know, at these gatherings, we got to meet them first and foremost. We got to hear their testimony. We got to celebrate them and break bread with them, and we got to watch them meet, connect, and some of them reconnected with each other from their past lives and their past work. And what we heard at these gatherings was what artists need. So real life information. And some examples are money to pay rent. I know you feel that in this room, right? Money to find other jobs. Money to leave their job. Money to care for family members. Money to care for themselves. And my favorite, money to give them room to breathe. And along with this photo, I'd actually like to share two of my favorite quotes from the artists. We had this really cute anonymous testimony box at these gatherings, and artists dropped some of the most profound things I've ever read in my life. So I'll share just two. The first is, it's divine to do the work, but it's also divine to get cash. And I like this one because the artist drew a dollar sign. And I was just like, yes, you get it. Another quote I'd like to share is, it's a bit longer, let me step back. CRNY is what allowed me to rebuild my practice after losing faith, thanks to art school and COVID. I've restarted a company I spent my childhood building, reconnected with lifelong friends and collaborators. At the start of this year, I almost took a soul-crushing job. CRNY support allowed me to reconsider, give myself time, invest in myself. That time has been well spent. I'm beyond grateful. Now, I'm an evolution of myself. Onward. So before I ramble on, this was so meaningful for all of us in the program because we got to hear in real time what artists are experiencing. And now that the payments are complete, we still hear from our artists about what they're going through, and we do hear a lot about their just to coordinate out their day jobs. So now that our programs are complete, we've got 6 months left, and we're turning our focus toward making change stick. And we're doing that mainly through research and storytelling, as well as policy and advocacy work. And I have a few plugs, and I'll get to the plugs in the QR code, but please check out our website if you're interested in the findings. We've got some live now, we've got some that will be released this fall. So for research, we have a host of participatory and collaborative evaluations. We've really enjoyed working with the NYU Cash Lab, and we loved connecting with scholars like Dr. Juliana Baden-Murray, who was formerly at Stanford. And we see storytelling and narrative change as a key component of this work, and we also have a number of projects on the way, also on our website. And it's important for us to tell these stories so that we can impact real policy change in New York and elsewhere. Wow, it's going by so quickly, I'm sad. We'll take a moment here to allow you all, if you'd like, to scan the QR code. It will take you to our website. It will take you to some quick links. And I have a few more plugs, and you'll find them on the QR code. So I believe these slides or something will be sent around. No need to capture it now, but stay tuned for the summer. We're going to be releasing a policy playbook. I think it's really cool. I think you'll think it's really cool. When you go on our website, check out the Stories tab, where there's really, really beautiful work samples from our artists, beautiful photos of them, videos of them. They are great, great people. And lastly, the most shameless plug, we have a free course that we made with Art.coop and Creative Study called Everyone is Essential. I'm gonna, so don't let me watch it. And it's a really exciting way to get involved for the GI movement. Yeah, and I just want to say thanks everyone for being here, and I took time out of your day. I think this is an amazing exhibit, and we gotta keep the movement going.
Hi everyone, I'm Marie-Laure Mulayi, and I'm a Belgian researcher, and I'm currently visiting the CPI, so the Center on Poverty and Inequality, and the Stanford Basic Income Lab. So this is just a slide to give a bit of information about CPI. So it's a center that does research and monitor trends in poverty and inequality in the United States, and is meant to develop policy that tries to reduce those inequalities. And there's a QR code and the website also if you want more information about the center and its work. So the Stanford Basic Income Lab was founded by Juliana, who is now working in New York University. And currently it's under the leadership of Professor David Groski and Sarah Kimberlin, who is also here among us. And we also have some advisors who in terms of work of the Basic Income Lab, so we have published a lot of papers about the concept of basic income and more about like the policies, the pilot, and so on. But you can find more information on the website if you're interested. And there's also a lot of visualization of basic income pilots and also testimonies of participants, and also a bit more data about the spendings and so on. We'll come back to this later on, but if you're interested, go to the website. So in this presentation, I will talk a bit more about basic income, what it is about, the concept of basic income, living with guaranteed income. In the second part, I will dive deeper into like the different pilots in the United States, discuss the results, and just try to give a bit more information about what is going on. In the last part, I will try to give a bit more like an international perspective by discussing 2 examples of basic income proposals, or like executed proposals actually, in other countries, just to give you a bit of more information about like the whole concept of who is eligible for basic income. And those 2 examples will show kind of 2 different types of recipients, and I think it kind of links to the conversation tonight about like artists who are also like a deserving group of basic income actually. So first of all, basic income. I think you all must have heard about basic income. It's a very attractive policy in the media in the United States. In Europe, there are politicians, like two presidential candidates, who have integrated this idea in their program. I think their proposal, like, if I look at the United States, this was more led by a tech entrepreneur who kind of linked basic income to this idea of automation. People will lose their job, mass unemployment, so we need to give them basic income. And it was more about like this functional way, the technological development. Meanwhile, in Europe, we had this idea. We already have very strong welfare states, but in France, for instance, this candidate was talking about like decommodifying life. It's about like making people less dependent of work and those post-materialistic values of self-development, self-realization. But unfortunately, it was not really popular in France. But I mean, he kind of advocated for the idea. And also, you have these new groups of organizations like the Basic Income Art Network, or here in the United States, the Mayor for Guaranteed Income. We try to really build a coalition around basic income and to gather knowledge to really push that policy forward. And in terms of implementation, in 2016, I think, there was like a referendum in Switzerland about implementing a basic income, but unfortunately it was massively rejected by 77% of the population. So yeah, a basic income, what is it? Like, I mean, it's a very ambiguous concept. I mean, when you talk about basic income, people have different ideas of basic income, they talk about different amounts, eligible population, and so on. So in general, in literature, we say it's a very ambiguous concept, basic income. And I've included this table, and you can find more, you can read more about like the what's in a name, the conceptual differences in like the paper that is on the website. But in my thesis, and I think most researchers define basic income as a policy that has like three main characteristics: to the individuality, so it's granted to individuals rather than households. Secondly, it's universal, and I mean, it's universal in the sense that you kind of target people where you have like universal ideas behind it. And thirdly, it's unconditional, so people don't have to work or to prove anything to receive it. And when you have those three main characteristics in terms of implementation, it can vary in how they look like. So I have this multidimensional approach of basic income, where I really see basic income as something that is diverse and people can implement in different ways with these three characteristics in mind. And when you think about the concept of basic income, I think it's also very important, especially in the context of the United States, to really keep in mind that those names also have like different connotations or narratives that are associated with them. And we'll come back to this later when we talk about guaranteed income in the next part. So as a survey researcher, I wanted to include some data about like what people think about basic income. I have like 2 slides about the EU and the United States. This is come from the first one is from the European Social Survey. And in the survey, they asked people about their support for basic income. And what you can see, I mean, you don't have to agree, look at it, everything, but like there are like one clear pattern. For people who don't know, the countries in which support is the highest are the Eastern European countries. And there, the welfare state, like the social protection, is less developed and less strong. And what we can conclude from this graph is that when the system is lacking, it's not strong enough, people are in need of an income floor of protection. That's what you can see from the first graph. The second one is from a recent data, from a recent survey. It's a graph I created myself. And it's in that survey, we asked people about their opinions about a conditional basic income or conditional basic income on work. And what we can see is that it's still very much supported that people have to work to earn benefits. And I will come back to this later, but I think when I think about basic income, I think one of the main challenges would be to make people accept that you don't have to work to actually receive state help or something. But this is what we see from the data. And in the United States, this is like a very recent survey that has been published. And the conclusion of the survey, and I think you can find more information about it, like it was conducted by Lake Research Partners, and they found that there's like a very high support for like an income floor in the United States in the population. Although I think like among Republicans, I think people earning more than $100K a year, support was less high. But in general, like this idea of providing people with an income floor is very like appreciated in the population. And maybe something more interesting, so in this survey they also kind of run like a pulse treatment. So they showed people information about the success of certain guaranteed income pilots, such as in Stockton, and they informed people about the fact that through the pilot, people were able to make ends meet, they felt less stressed, and what we see is when we inform people about like the effects of those pilots, that support increased more. So it's maybe very important to keep in mind that like the testimonials and all these experiences are very important in like shaping people's opinions about basic income. One of the questions that people often ask is a basic income implemented anywhere in the world?
I'm so glad you have this.
And the answer is no. But however, for some advocates, they consider the Alaska Permanent Fund dividend as a form of basic income. However, it's like not a monthly payment, it's like annually people get like this amount of money in the bank account, like adults, children, you just have to be a citizen, and like I think there are a couple of conditions that are very universal in general. And this fund is funded by the oil and mining revenues, and what we can see from very recent research is that when you kind of take into account the money they receive through this fund, it kind of reduces poverty rates in the population. So this is one example of like a payment made by the government to citizens. So what about the United States? So here's a map like of the different experiments here in the US, and I have like a QR code. If you go to the website, you can really click on those pilots and get more information about all the pilots that are being done in the United States and like in the whole world. Like we'll come back to this later. And as you can see, there are a lot of them, like more than 155. Like some of them are still running, and 67 are still active. But it is kind of a clear sign of like there's interest in like this unconditional cash benefits all over the US, maybe because the system doesn't protect people enough. But yeah, you have a lot of them. I also include a definition of the guaranteed income. I think it was already discussed previously. But what I wanted to highlight is that guaranteed income and like compared to basic income is like really targeted. Because what I wanted to say in the United States, when we talk about universal basic income, people tend to link this with like the tech industry, the tech entrepreneurs, like this type of automation thing. And guaranteed income pilot is more about like recognizing the values of people, the dignity of people, the need to provide income for to people, not per se linked to work, automation, and anything, but just because they are in great need of state intervention. And secondly, what is also important to link with like the guaranteed income idea is that this social justice idea is also very much associated with basic income, with guaranteed income. I don't know if you are aware, but for instance, like Martin Luther King advocated for guaranteed income back in the days to release people out of poverty and as a way to just like, target inequalities that are structured by race in the United States. And so you have all these pilots in Washington, in Los Angeles, in Virginia, and they really try to target very needy people most of the time, and I think a majority of them are targeting, I think, families who earn less than a percentage of the median income and so on. But it's very much about really trying to give an income floor to a very needy people, households in general. And when you talk about the results, I've included this one graph, but you can find it also on the website, and you have more information about what people are spending the money on. And I don't think you can read it, but it's mostly about like very basic stuff like paying bills, food, and very basic needs that they're funding with the money. And what we see is that, based on the limited research available, is that there are very positive health and financial outcomes. People are less stressed about like money. They also experience more better health in general, but being less stressed, of course. And also, some people also are more engaged in community work. I think there's like this one testimony of a woman who says that she kind of helped her neighbor because she didn't need the money and so on. So you really see that this guaranteed income really connect people with each other actually. But of course, there are limitations of every research, I think, and especially for this guaranteed income pilots, we see that the sample size, so the number of participants are very small, so it's very difficult to make conclusions based on those very limited samples, and also the amount is kind of low, so it's also difficult to make life changes, like big changes based on like the amount granted. And also they're kind of running for a short time of period, so it's also really hard to like have a long-term investment, I would say, with the money. Now currently in terms of international examples, as you can see, there are other countries who are also experiencing basic guaranteed income, basic income, and but like not as much as in the United States, of course. And I will give you two examples of two basic income guaranteed income pilots. The first one is the Finland basic income experiment, and Finland is the first European country to actually really experiment with this idea of basic income. But of course, it was targeted at unemployed people, and I think just based by reading the policy papers and the initial purpose of the research, it was really trying to see whether unemployed people will work, like the employment effect, I would say, and also the well-being of the recipients. But the employment was really, really important for the government since they were funding this whole experiment. So people received, like 2,000 unemployed people received 560 euros, like $603 a month for 2 years. And what we can see in terms of the results, like in terms of well-being, they reported higher life satisfaction, they were less stressed about money in general, and lower stress. But in terms of employment in general, there was no significant effect between the control group and the treatment group. So people who received the money, people who didn't receive the money, and of course, as always, a lot of criticism for, in terms of the sample size and the short duration and so on. So this is like a graph of the results. As you can see, people, recipients of basic income in Finland reported living comfortably more than the control group. So the control group did not receive the basic income, and also in terms of like life satisfaction, it was higher and significantly higher than the people who did not receive it. But in terms of employment, there was no effect in Finland at least. And when you look at other examples of like work, because I mean it's a very important issue, I think, how you frame basic income, and I think in the United States it's not yet the case, or sometimes it is, but in Europe and in other examples, it's really about like, are people going to work more or less? And it's really as if some politicians might be scared to give money to people because they might reduce their work intentions and so on. But there are two examples where, so the first one, you left an experiment, what we see is that there's like this gender divide. So for men, like receiving the basic income tends to increase their probability of employment, but for women, they tend to reduce it, and especially women who are younger, who earn lower wages and who have children, they tend to work less because of the guaranteed the money. And then secondly, the guaranteed income in Stockton, we saw no reduction in employment effect. Of course, like this sample was very small, but still it's very interesting to see that people did not stop working. And also they kind of report that they have more agencies who kind of refuse poorly paid jobs. So there's more opportunity to really engage in work that is meaningful to them. But of course, there are many unknowns about it.
Is it okay to ask a question, or should I? Okay.
In terms of behavioral changes, I think to be able to measure them, it's really hard to measure very like significant changes when you provide like a very low amount for 1 year period of time. But most research is very ongoing, and we're still kind of trying to see what people would do if they would get the money for a longer period of time. Secondly, my second example is basic income for farmers in Korea. So Korea, I find it a very interesting one because most of the time I think about basic income and very the deservingness of groups, I would say. We never think about like certain societal groups, and for this event, think about artists. But in South Korea, there are all the countries there are different palettes trying to give a basic income to very to different groups of people. And in this case, it's about farmers, and they get this amount per year. And the reason behind it, and I found it very interesting, and that's why I wanted to share it, is because one of the reasons why they wanted to give the money to basic income to farmers because of the recognition of their societal value. I mean, in South Korea, there is this divide between the rural and the urban regions, and the farmers are very poor. Their income has really decreased the past few years, and we see a lot of different palettes all over the country targeting those groups who need it the most. And yeah, I think it's a very interesting example of like kind of conceptualizing who is deserving of state help and who maybe the money that they're providing, or the fact that they're doing their launch of these pilots really kind of underlines the value of farmers for the whole society. So in terms of concluding remarks, I would say universal basic income is a controversial policy. Just giving money to everyone without condition is kind of risky and generates a lot of discussion. And sometimes people then think of guaranteed income, just targeting the basic income to those who need it the most seems to be more realistic, especially in the US, but I think also in other contexts. But of course, there's diversity of opinions about basic income, guaranteed income. People support it, don't support it. But I think we need to have more research about what exactly people think about basic income, just as a way to just think about ways to kind of change narratives and try to kind of address people's concerns about basic income and so on. And yeah, that brings me to my last point of framing and the narrative of basic income is still strongly attached to wage labor. And there's also this idea of the national values, of the more shift in terms of who is deserving of state help and so on. So I think in general, we need to rethink the whole coalition building. How can we build a coalition, a social and political one, around this idea of helping people who need it most? So yeah, thank you.
I'm resisting or my desire to go upstairs. See, so Kevin Dublin, I want you to take a moment, if you will, and just think about and hold in your head answers to these two questions. Give you a second. So one, what are 3 higher powers that you believe in? Doesn't have to be religious or spiritual. Can be that. But what are 3 higher powers you believe in? So let's take a second for that. And which ancestors sustain you? Who do you think about? Who do you carry? So here's some answers for me. 3 higher powers, universal forces. God. The will of the people, human potential. And some of the ancestors who sustain me, that is a photo taken with my phone. So I was like, where did I put that scan? It's called scan 00 something. of this photo of my parents. Actually, my mom was pregnant with me there. And so they have passed. And then these two scans here are in great, actually not even that many grades. I should have put it down. My grandmother's on one of my mom's side, one of my father's side. So there's Olive, and this is from this is from, what year was this one? This is a more recent find. So I'm doing some genealogy. This is from 1805, I want to say. And the second, Adelaide, and that one's from 1863. And these are from records that plantation, holders had. And so I've been thinking a lot about them and the work that I'm doing and writing now. So as mentioned, I was a recipient of guaranteed income through San Francisco's guaranteed income pilot for artists, which was administered by Marie-Laure Center for the Arts. Like, let's give it up, like, just one for just life changing. But before the pilot, so I've been in San Francisco since 2016. California for 4 years before that. Was living here full time, and I'd spent the previous year, 2016, crashing off friends. Honestly, a friend who traveled a lot is like, oh, I would stay at this place and I'd be up here. And I'm like, oh, I want to find a job here because I was in San Diego and I finished grad school, and it was one of those things with school, work, day jobs, and not finding day jobs that were like, really able to sustain. When I was first here, I worked in admissions, was at an art college during the year, and I went back to North Carolina in the summers, and I would teach, do youth programs, and work with writers there. So I was transitioning from that admissions work to teaching writing and web development in San Francisco and Oakland. So I was doing work with One Litquake, you might know Litquake, in San Francisco, through a specific program, Elder Writing Project. And we went into community centers, we went into skilled nursing facilities, and worked with elders and creative writing from San Francisco Campus from Jewish Living to Cayuga Connectors, community group, to Georgia Casino Center, maybe. And so, was working there, doing that, first teaching it, then directing the program, and also because again that was one of those things. The funds, as you know, was also leading open coding sessions and teaching web development in Oakland. The pandemic. So who here was affected by the pandemic and shelter in place? Wait, why isn't everybody's hand up? Yeah, there was a lot of quick transitioning. I was looking at recently for a demo lesson I'm going to be doing at a video that I recorded of teaching our first classes online with the elders. And I was like, wow, there was a lot of this footage of just like figuring it out. Like, I hadn't used Zoom before. Like, none of us had really used it before. It was just like this whole mess. But after, so like during that time, it was, okay, you can't, we couldn't meet in person in terms of, with boot camp and with the coding. So it was like, oh, that was a huge source of income that was gone, just like wiped out. And there were fewer opportunities to teach because some of the sites where we were also didn't completely have, we didn't have infrastructure set up yet for being able to do that. So again, when it's contract based and you're doing work, it's like, oh, well, now we're doing less and we're making less. So a lot going on. And in the midst of that, so so I have two children, Darian and River. Oh, Darian Sheldon Dublin, River Song Dublin. Yes, I am a nerd. If you was from, but they've been living solely with their mom for the past 2.5 years ever since we divorced more down south. And so that's why I was there, moving up here. And it's like, oh, we'll make more money and they'll be able to move up here. And so that was like a step back. So all regular income being lost except for about $300 a month and saving just that, that had accumulated toward my son moving up because he was like, just really wanted to do it. We're just dwindling down. And part of the pilot, it was this really simple application process. Asking just a few of those questions again. Steph was mentioned, Stephanie, shut up, Stephanie. Right. Nice of you, Rosa, shut up. Deborah Collins, shut up. No, sorry. Really, really simple application. I almost guaranteed income is something that, where we come from, the Martin Luther King book was mentioned, and it was something that in undergrad I encountered and I read and I loved, but was way more cynical. Was way more cynical of a person. I was like, this could never be a thing. Even though there's all this, it's there. And when, Andrew Yang's campaign came up, right? I was like, oh, and it was like, whoa, it was a way for more people to tap in, and this whole conversation started grew larger here. The things that were already happening, here, but sort of put fuel onto that fire, and it became one of those things where it's like, oh, whoa, maybe something that happened, and being a recipient of the pilot, it just was like, wow. So pilot in general, $1,000 a month for 18 months, and I mean there are of course bills, being paid. There are of course really, really general things like, oh, this really helps with, putting some things towards rent. But beyond that, it led to really investment in family, community investment, and building projects, which in and of themselves were about investments in, working towards these things that, were really making, I'm not really cynical. I feel like the way sometimes when people think you're cynical, because you really connect and you want these things, and you believe in things, and you're like, whoa, I care. How many people care? So I was dressed up as a bear, poetry bear this morning in a room of first graders. So I was asking a lot of questions, and I was getting my tail pulled, and it's kind of fun. I learned cock-up balls, you know what that is. But so if I ask too many questions, it's just like, no, I'm still a little in that mode. But when I think about investment in family, one, my son is able to move full time. That's something. Yeah, it's amazing. So I saw the masks out there, and he's at Richardson School of the Arts right now. He's in high school now, doing his thing in the theater department. But I was able to visit my father in hospice during that time, and be there, for the funeral when he passed, and write about it and deal with a lot of things, and then really begin this from conversations, realizing that my father being, he was 79 at the time, being the oldest immediate family member, thinking about his brothers and up to one of my uncles, and and telling more stories, being able to be there, to hear those stories, hearing about talking about an uncle, a great uncle I had was lynched and was like down the road from a church that I went to as a kid, and finding out through this practice of, you know, or this slow process of genealogy that like that church is literally only across the street from the plantation where like my family and my ancestors were. And it led to community investment, right? So there is community investment in terms of, again, I really saw, I was so grateful, and I'm still so grateful, you know, to be a part of the program, that any form of advocacy, whether that is, you know, going in to speak about it, whether that is, you know, congressional testimonies, whether that is speaking at marches, whether that is helping like, you know, author things with ballot initiatives. It was like, okay, what can do to contribute and give back? It also makes space for volunteering more. So 826 Valencia, shout out 826 Valencia, if you know 826 Valencia. Their Black Student Initiative was began like during that time. So it's a Black Literary Achievement Club, and it really allowed me space to do, you know, I mean, I had volunteered before, but when you're like, I have to earn more income, you have less space for that. And so I was able to mentor a part of that program with a lot of, you know, amazing high school kids, and still, you know, get to a little bit, and my son's part of that program, and building projects with young artists, like the living room, which there's a little, so, I should say what these pictures are. So, in the top, left, so my daughter, son Darian, niece Zuri, my nephew Bryson, and nephew Jonathan, they're like brought down having fun. And, you know, they had seen, we took a trip, you know, we went, oh, okay, I'm gonna take a trip with the family in North Carolina, and for family reunion, and this picture, my wife is signing this. But you know, they were able to connect with family they hadn't seen since they were like 3, you know, and 7 respectively. So yeah, you know, there's this reconnection there. With the living room, I mean, I was like, oh wait, I should put this on the slides. I was like, I can write it down because I remember mostly from the top of my head. So living room reading series, over the past like 3 years, we've produced more than 50 events. We paid over 150 writers, held 8 pop-ups, partnered with half a dozen festivals, another half dozen community partners, about 24, like, you know, like emerging, or I guess like beginning of food pop-up, you know, proprietors. We have 2 regular series, and held space to ask for discussions, for folks to ask questions and talk about what will it take for everyone to have enough resources, or why capitalism, or what feeds your body and what feeds your mind. Like those are some of the ideas, having themes, bringing in poets, and through art, have that lead into discussions about what can we do. And I think for me, one of the most like powerful moments is I participated in the conversation too. I'm like, oh, like everyone can stop, right? No one have, find somebody who you do not know, and we're gonna talk about this question. And, you know, I was talking to someone, and there was that question about, what does it, you know, can we ever get to a point where what can we do to make sure everyone has enough resources? And his first answer was like, we can't do that, it's impossible. And I was like, maybe, but like, you know, like what does having enough resources mean? And he was like, you know, he was like saying a couple of things, and like, oh, work, and like, you know, this, and then come back to that deservedness aspect. And I was like, well, what if you think of it in terms of housing, having enough food to eat, being able to do work or spend time and contribute in a way that, you know, they actively either enjoy or at least more than tolerate, and, you know, be able to have space to make decisions. And he was like, oh, when you say it like that, it actually doesn't seem that hard. And so I was like, yeah, that's good. And then after the pilots was the, you know, And it really is a lot of, like, okay, if I'm gonna do these things, I want to be able to pay all the right. So it's like all these things are happening, led to, doing more like grant applications and applying for grants and bringing things in beyond that. It became a lot of like fundraising at the events and then being able to, pay artists from that too. And it was this shift of the mindset, like from scarcity to abundance, from being like, oh, this, thinking these things are, not even just like going to change one day, but like things are within grasp. It's like everything's within reach. So reaching forward. And then just continuing the advocacy, continue learning and reading. I'm super excited. It's on, actually it's the next slide. Just started reading Kelly Foster's The Guarantee. Anyone know? It just came out like recently. Ooh, gotta get it. But continue learning and thinking about different frameworks and different approaches and in what ways I can contribute and create opportunities for others. This is actually from, I think this is either from Introduction to the first chapter, because I've only read like the first 3 so far. But a house we can choose to construct next and center the inherent worth and dignity of every American. It can prioritize stability. It can unleash mass abundance to replace the scarcity caused by hoarding. And so, that's from here too, by Naja Foster. I have this QR code, so I was like, ooh, resources. Some of these things already mentioned. I was like, ooh, QR codes, perfect. I'll add some of these things mentioned. I'll fill this out and see. This one was, I think, specifically to the employment effects, because it also led to just being able to work more, take more contracts. Economic Security Project, Stanford Basic Income Lab, as you all know now, Income Movement, Mayors for Guaranteed Income, Basic Income Today, which is like a publication online. It's Santins runs it in a Vox article, like talking about cash transfers, which we use to reduce homelessness. So I think I'll add some more because a lot of things are coming to mind as things were going on. So if you go to that link, there'll be all these links and more. But I mean, that is pretty much it for me. Here are things I didn't QR code this. It's just